I did have a whole skit planned out for this, but as soon as I started to film it, I realised it wasn't that great, so you'll just have to do with some videos which are extremely out of context. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It has been a while since my last video, but there hasn't been any new movies or shows out that have been worth covering in the style that I do. But thinking back to it, a show which has become very popular recently, well, it's always been popular, but it's risen up in terms of popularity once again, is the show Daredevil. Now, I don't feel like I have to give a spoiler warning as it's been quite a while now, but this is due to Daredevil himself, Matt Murdock, appearing in Spider-Man No Way Home, and also Kingpin returning in Hawkeye. So whether that's got people wanting to revisit it or get excited now that these characters are going to be in the MCU properly, or people just saw that and realized, oh, okay, now it's time to watch this. Anyways, with that, I finally did complete season 3, which I hadn't until recently, so I feel like it's a perfect time to cover this show, and a time like this isn't really going to come around again unless season 4 does get made. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into my ranking of all 3 seasons of Daredevil. Now, just to clarify, all 3 of these seasons are very good. Obviously, I did easily determine what my list was, but by having this in last place doesn't mean it's bad, but season 2 was probably the weakest out of the bunch for me. And just because I have it in last place, I don't want to start talking about the negative things the whole time, but obviously I will justify why it is in last place. But this is a great continuation of the first season. It doesn't just stick to doing more of the same of what season 1 did. It continues to expand the universe, I guess because technically it is in the MCU. It brings in both the Punisher and Elektra, both of whom are really good, but where the issues do come from is, I think, having them both in here, because it can be a bit too much at times, a bit convoluted, but still, them individually were great. Especially Jon Bernthal, he literally is the perfect Punisher, and he's the next character I hope is brought back into the MCU. In fact, to be honest, even though they have their issues, I think it would be cool just to bring back Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and Jessica Jones, all the characters back, so that those shows really do impact the MCU. But anyway, I got a bit sidetracked there. While these characters, Elektra and the Punisher, are great to bring in, they can't really fill the massive hole that Wilson Fisk left with his big presence. While they were great villains slash anti-heroes, they didn't match up to Wilson Fisk. And where it does get a bit convoluted, while being vital information, on one hand, we're introduced to the Punisher and setting up for his own show. We're introduced to Elektra and the hand that she brings with her, as well as her past with Matt and Matt's past in itself with Stick. So a lot does happen in this season. Sometimes it can be a little bit too much and not feel as natural, but nonetheless still a very good season. Just maybe not up to the standard of the first one. And just for comparison, while this season is in last place, it still has a higher rating than what I gave for Loki and WandaVision, so this season in itself is higher than all the other MCU shows I have seen. Make of that what you will, although it does come in at last place out of the Daredevil seasons. I didn't actually start watching this show until about 2017, 2018, so going into it I knew that there had been some big praise for it, but at the time when it was first announced that it was going to be made, I remember just looking at it and thinking, oh, it's just going to be another superhero TV show, nothing special. So when I actually got around to watching it myself, I was very much surprised from what I initially believed. I was very surprised at how great this season is. But as this is a TV show and it has a lot more hours devoted to it than a movie, you can really tell a more realistic and thought out story in this way, even though it may take a long time for him to officially don the Daredevil suit. It is such a thorough origin story for Matt Murdock in this season, and I think it's simply brilliant. If you come in watching this after seeing all the MCU movies, because it's technically part of the MCU, it'll be a breath of fresh air at how grounded this is. You know, there's not going to be a huge CGI battle at the end. It's all strictly hand-to-hand combat. It is brilliant. Now, if you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about with the iconic long take scenes which actually occur in every season. Obviously starting here in the first season with the hallway fight, but this real grounded and gritty feel wasn't anything we have experienced in the MCU, and to us at times, I'll talk about this later on in the video, but the political side of things or the gang side of things can take the spotlight more than, you know, the superhero sort of aspect, so you kind of forget that it actually is a Marvel property. I know I did many times. So you don't get too much action, but when it does come, it literally does not disappoint. Both Charlie Cox and Vincent D'onofrio are absolutely brilliant, as I'm sure you've heard. The two that have returned to Marvel properties since this show's cancellation, they're both brilliant in their individual ways. I'll start with Charlie Cox, as he is Matt Murdock himself. He just has this likability about him, and not to mention, I think one of his more underrated features as Matt Murdock is how he portrays being blind, because he really does sell it. He sells it to the point where when I see interviews with him in real life, I just think of him as someone who's blind, but then seeing his eyes move around the way a person with sight does, it just feels odd to me. Vincent D'onofrio is absolutely brilliant and terrifying as Kingpin. He's big, intimidating, but he does show vulnerabilities which makes him feel more real, as everyone does have a weakness. There'd been doubts about TV shows portraying superheroes, and this proves that it can be done, and in some cases can be more beneficial than a full-length movie. And as I see it, this was the beginning of one of the greatest superhero TV shows of all time. Vincent D'onofrio returns for season 3, and immediately his presence is felt, and to be honest, he's even better than he was in season 1. And that is really saying something, as the whole time he's essentially locked up, so he doesn't move around too much. He's developed more, as you very much see the amount of control he does have around Hell's Kitchen, whether small or large in terms of capability, and also the way he can manipulate people, like we do see through the character of Agent Poindexter, who I think was a brilliant side villain to have. Best qualities of this show thus far have been put into season 3 and are expanded upon, improved upon. The stakes, the action, the plot, and even the character dynamics. After watching this season and seeing what others have said about it, many complain that the season starts a bit slow, and I understand where that criticism comes from, but for me, I think it's necessary and didn't bother me, and if anything, it makes it feel even more real. As Matt deals with the events of the Defenders, he needs time to recover and regain his strength and senses. Not to mention, he uses this accident as an advantage, as people think Matt Murdock is dead. And that pretty much carries forth what his character is like for the remainder of this season, where the whole time he is pretty much Daredevil, never Matt Murdock. He struggled with the juggling of the two in season 2, so seeing him just go full Daredevil for the whole season was really interesting, especially during the day, as we didn't see that much. Going down this route, I thought, okay, it's going to be difficult to find any use for Karen and Foggy, but they managed to do it and made their characters more enjoyable, in my opinion. Karen arguably having more to do than Foggy, but they both played their part and had engaging and intriguing side missions, which ultimately lead to an absolutely flawless execution with this show's ending. Not just the ending itself, the episodes leading up to it, they're really, really superb. As I mentioned, I forgot I was watching a superhero thing, let alone Marvel, where it got so realistic, dark, gritty, that I thought I was watching a political drama. I think also that is helped because Matt doesn't really don the suit this season. Poindexter does. But yeah, this was such a season that I really got engaged into and caught up in the writing. Writing was superb. This season does not only continue the high quality from the previous seasons, but it improved upon it, delivering my #1 pick for all 3 Daredevil seasons. And while at the time it wasn't intended to be the final season, I still think it left things off in a nice place, which hopefully we will explore further along in the MCU. So that was my ranking of all 3 Daredevil seasons. I'd imagine many people agree with me, because from what I've seen, many people do have the same ranking. But either way, let me know what yours is down below. I'm interested to see if there would be any other placements for you. Also, sorry for the lack of uploads recently. There just hasn't really been too much to cover, and not to mention I have been working a lot. So, you know, if I had more subscribers and could gain more views on things, I would make more videos in this spare time about random things. But when I've experimented with that in the past, it does bring down my views for that video as well as future videos. So I want to try and keep these views going up, because we have been doing well recently, and I thank you for that. So if you could help me out by liking and subscribing, it would really mean a lot, because I guess technically this is a random video in the sense that there hasn't been a new season of Daredevil released. So I really appreciate you watching this, and I hope to see you in my next video.